Greetings, this is Amy Wentley with Chai Knuckles Knitting, and this is episode 2021-7, Zahavi, the sleeve cap, German short rows. So I'm working on the Zahavi sweater in an online class, and I'm working with the front and the back, and I just completed a series of 3 videos on how to do the exposed joinery bind off, how to do the side seam, here you go, side seam, and then how to pick up stitches for the armhole. And so now I wanted to talk about, for the option 1, the long ribbed sleeves, not the short sleeve, but long ribbed sleeves. You have the first instructions on the top of the sleeve is to shape a sleeve cap. And we're going to do that with short rows. And so we just picked up, for my size, 74 stitches around the armhole. And then we joined to work in the round. So I just started out, when I joined to work in the round, I just knit 1 and purl 1 to start the ribbing. But we just joined to work in the round. Okay, it gets a little bit confusing because the first instruction on the shape the sleeve cap instructions says to work flat 1 by 1 ribbing over 41 stitches. So understand that we just joined to work in the round here at the bottom of the sleeve cap, and we are going to work 41 stitches of ribbing. Now it doesn't seem like it's flat, right, because we're working in the round. How could that be flat? But what's going to happen is we're going to work 41 stitches, and we're going to start at the bottom of the sleeve. This is the armpit here. We're going to work 41 stitches up until the shoulder seam, and we're actually going to work a little bit beyond the shoulder seam, but we are not going to work the whole round. That's why it says work flat, because we're not going to work around in a whole circle yet to get to the beginning. We're going to stop here, and I have knit 41 stitches in ribbing, knit 1, purl 1 ribbing, past the shoulder seam. It ends up being 5 stitches past my shoulder seam. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn my work. I'm not going to finish the round. I'm not going to keep going this way. I'm going to turn my work, and I'm actually looking at the inside of the sleeve now. I'm not at the outside of the work anymore. I'm looking at and working on the inside of the sleeve. So if you see, your working yarn is actually coming off of the left-hand needle now because you turned in the middle of a row. So you're going to do a German short row, and you're going to do what the pattern calls a slip and pull. Some other people call that a double stitch. But so the first instruction, short row number 1, said work flat 1 by 1 ribbing over 41 stitches and turned. So I've done that. So now I'm at the beginning of short row 2, and I'm going to slip and pull. And what that means is I take the stitch from the left hand needle and I slip it purlwise over to the right needle. Then the pull part, I take my working yarn and I yank it over the top of the right hand needle and bring it towards the back, and that makes this into a double stitch. This is actually 1 stitch, but it's got 2 legs now. So you're going to have to find this stitch later on. But we're always going to treat this stitch like 1 stitch, but it just got pulled out of shape. So we slipped and pulled, and now it says work flat 1 by 1 ribbing over 7 stitches and then turn again. So we're going to work the 1 by 1 ribbing over 7 stitches now. The first stitch is a purl. We just purl the purls and knit the knits. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Whoops, I got off cadence somehow, I think. Oops. Oops, I dropped a stitch. Pardon me. There's a little puppy down there who got dropped. Look at that. Phew, that was a good find. So this is supposed to be a knit stitch, so I'm going to go ahead and just pick that up, get it back on my needle as a knit stitch. Thank you for bearing with me here, and you just saw how I fixed a dropped stitch. Little bonus in this lesson, huh? Okay, so grab your working yarn again, and I was working on, I pulled the stitch back here. This is the pulled stitch. See how it has two legs? You turn it over, you can see how it's weird. So I'm going to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and knit 1 is 6, and purl 1 is 7. Okay? Then they tell me to turn again. So this time when I turn my work, I'm not finishing that whole round, I'm just turning my work. Now I am looking at the public side. I'm not looking at the inside of my armhole anymore. I'm now looking at the outside of my armhole. And so now it tells me for short row 3 that I'm supposed to slip and pull. So in order to slip and pull, you should always have your yarn in the front. Okay, it's an important point. So I've got my working yarn in the front, I'm going to slip as if to purl, and then I'm going to yank that working yarn over the top, and I'm making another one of these funky two-legged stitches called the double stitch in German short rows. And then the next instruction on short row 3 says, work to 5 stitches beyond the pull stitch from the previous row. So we need to work to the pulled stitch we did before, and that is right here. And you can always tell the pulled stitch, you can just move around on your needle and look. It looks weird. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and knit and purl up until that stitch, and then we're going to resolve that pulled stitch. So it's 1, we're going to work up to the pulled stitch. So we're knitting and purling again. And when I get to that pulled stitch, this is going to be a purl. Look how it looks like a double-legged stitch. I'm going to bring my yarn to the front. I'm going to insert my needle into both legs of that double stitch, and I'm going to purl it together. And that's all I do to resolve that stitch. Then the instruction is asking me to work to 5 stitches beyond that. Okay, so I'm going to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 stitches beyond that, and then it says turn again. So now I'm on short row 4, and I'm going to turn, and I am now looking again at the inside of my sleeve. My yarn's coming off the left needle, so the first thing I want to do is I want to slip and pull. So I'm going to slip as if to purl, then I'm going to take that working yarn, I'm going to yank it over the top and make a double stitch again. So that's my double stitch. Then it says I'm supposed to work to 5 stitches beyond the pulled stitch from the previous row and then turn. So it's going to be the same sort of thing again. I'm going to work up to the next pulled stitch. The next pulled stitch is going to be on the other side of this marker here. It's this wonky looking stitch right here. See how this one has 2 legs? If you turn it over, it looks weird on the back too. So that's the one we're working towards. It's going to be 2 stitches after that marker. So I'm just going to go ahead and do the knit and purl ribbing up until I get to that pulled stitch. Things are a little tight on my 16-inch needle here. As I get going on the ribbing, it's going to loosen up a little bit because the ribbing actually kind of stretches. The ribbing kind of stretches and expands. So that'll make things a little bit looser on my needle once I actually get going at working the ribbing in the round. Right now I'm still working it flat and things are a little tight. So I made it up to the pulled stitch from the last time. On the ribbing, I'm again at a purl stitch. So I'm going to bring my yarn to the front. You might not be, by the way. It depends on how many stitches you've got and everything. So for me and my size, it's a purl stitch. I'm going to bring my yarn to the front and I'm going to insert my needle into both legs of that pulled stitch and I'm going to purl them together. And then the instructions on short row 4 tell me I am supposed to work until 5 stitches past that. Okay, and so that was a purl stitch, so I'm going to knit, purl, knit, purl, knit. Okay, and then it says turn. Now it's set, the instructions say that I repeat short rows 3 and 4 another 5 times. So you will do exactly this, rows 3 and 4 another 5 times. So that's going to be 10 more times doing these short rows. And then you're going to wrap it up with short row number 5, which just takes you to the beginning of the round marker. And so you're going to just work on short row 5. You're just going to work the flat ribbing all the way until you reach the beginning of round marker. Then that starts the instruction round 1. And that's working circular 1 by 1 ribbing in the round now, not flat. You're not turning anymore. And for some of the sizes, you will need to work some more circular knitting before you start decrease rounds. And so just consult your pattern for that and they'll help you along with that. And I hope this video helped you out. I also have some other videos on my blog about German short rows. So if any of this confused you at all, you could perhaps check out one of those also. So thank you very much for viewing this video, and I hope you look for future ones. We'll see you soon. Bye-bye.